All right, guys, I got two ways of factoring today. One is just factoring GCF, which, to be honest, that's everything you factor. You got to do that. And factor by grouping, a special case when there's, well, you'll see in a second. Factor by grouping and GCF. First of all, always factor out the GCF first. If there's, you have to look for the greatest common factor every time you factor. I don't care what we're doing the whole rest of the year. We're looking for GCF first every time. Here's three examples real quick. If I'm looking at these two terms, I'm looking for what they have in common. They both have a 4. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to factor out the 4 out of each term. If I factor a 4 out of the first term, that just leaves the x squared. 4 goes into 25 times. That's called taking out the GCF. That's all you do. On the next set right here, this next term, this next polynomial, they're all negative. We can take out a negative. They'll have a 5, and they all have an x. So I'm going to take out a negative out of each one, a 5 out of each one, and an x out of each one. The first term that will leave a 4 and two x's. The second term that will leave a 2 and a 1x. And the third one that will just leave a 7. Now notice that they're all pluses now because I took out the negative sign. All right, and this last one here, looking at that, looks like they all have a 3 in common. So I'm taking out the 3. That leaves an x cubed there. 3 goes into 18 6 times. 3 goes into 6 2 times. And 3 goes into 15 5 times. That's all you do, guys. That's taking out the GCF. Okay, so about half of our assignment tomorrow will be just doing that only, just taking that one step. But please remember, that's the first thing you do. I don't care what we factor the next few days, that's always the first step. Okay, factor by grouping. 3 things to know about factor by grouping. We're going to do this when there are 4 terms. First of all, it has to be 4 terms. Secondly, this is the steps we're going to do. We're going to factor the GCF out of the first 2 terms. We're going to combine the first 2, take out the GCF. Do the same thing with the second 2 terms, take out the GCF. Then we're going to factor the GCF out of the 2 big remaining terms. I know that sounds a little complicated. It's really not. Let me show you about 2 or 3 examples here. Here's the first one. First of all, look at it. There's 4 terms. First step is we're going to combine those 2 terms and those 2 terms and see what they have in common. Okay, so the first 2 terms have an a squared. They both have 2 a's. That leaves an a minus 7. Now, before I go further, that a minus 7 is huge. I need to get an a minus 7 again. I need to get the same thing in the parentheses when I do the second GCF as I did the first GCF. So this time the GCF is a 4, and look what that leaves, an a minus 7. Now we're one step away from being there. If I look at that term and that term, they both have a minus 7. So now that's like the new GCF. So I'm going to pull out the a minus 7, and here's the deal. If I pull out that a minus 7, what that leaves is an a squared on the first term and a 4 on the second term, and there you have it. Okay, so there's the steps. Not bad. Takes 2 lines. Let's do one more. All right, same thing here. I'm going to group the first 2 together. Now, if I'm looking at those, they both have a 3. They both have an x squared. Now, if I take out a 3x squared, that leaves a 1x on the first term and a 2 on the second. That may be the hardest part. You got to be able to do a GCF and know what they have left in common. The second 2, I can take out a 10. That's the GCF out of the second 2. Also leaves x plus 2. And again, it only works if you get the same thing in the parentheses. You got to get the same thing. All right, so now they have an x plus 2 in common. So if I pull out as a GCF the x plus 2, what that leaves me with is a 3x squared on the first term and a 10 on the second term. And guys, that's it. I'm going to show you one big one, and we're done. All right, here we go. A special case. I said this on the first 3 or 4 slides, and I kind of didn't say it on the second 2. But when you factor, I don't care what you're factoring, you have to look for this first. I know there's 4 terms. You're like, hey, it's 4 terms. We're going to factor by grouping, which is true, but you got to look for GCF if there is one. And I'm looking at those 4 terms, and what I'm seeing is every term up there has a 4. So the first thing I'm doing is I'm going to take out the 4. That leaves an x cubed and an x squared. That leaves a 2x and a 2. Okay, you got to do that. You have to do that first. Okay, so now let's factor by grouping. The 4 stays. Don't drop the 4. The 4 stays. The first 2 terms, what do they have in common? They have an x squared in common. If I pull out an x squared out of this one, that leaves an x. X squared goes into x squared 1 time. That's a big deal. The 1 is a big deal. Second 2 terms, you can pull out a 2. That leaves an x there and just 1, because 2 times 1 is 2. All right, now, finish it up. I'm looking at that term and that term. What do they have in common? They have an x plus 1 in common. And if you pull out the x plus 1, what do they have? They have an x squared and a plus 2. Factor by grouping. However, look for GCF first every stinking time. Okay, that's good. We'll work on it tomorrow. hopefully be an easy day for you. I think it should be, but we'll see. See you then.